Wonderful. Next up, we have Žiga Drev, is founder and managing director at OriginTrail. He's based in Hong Kong and working on a decentralized blockchain-supported network in building transparency in supply chains. So welcome, Žiga.
My name is Žiga Drev. I'm coming from Slovenia. We also have a company established in Hong Kong, so we're there pretty often. And today I'm going to be talking about transparency in supply chains and how blockchain might become basically a killer app for supply chains. Now, when we started this company back in 2013, and now we have a bit less than a decade of experience in working with supply chains, we were building centralized solution. Over the course of a few years, we realized that blockchain is a very necessary component if you want to increase trust amongst actors that are exchanging data. But why should we care? Why should we care about increasing transparency in supply chains? Why should we care about the usage of blockchain? Well, if you look at this picture, and this picture satellite image was taken by NASA in August this year, and over the course of 2 weeks, this is basically the image of all the fires that were started in Amazonia and elsewhere in South America. Now, in less than a minute, you could see one football pitch of Amazon forest getting on fire. So it was a very, very rapid escalation of a very bad thing. Now you could see this as the lungs of the planet burning, and this is creating a huge, huge problem not only for us living on this planet, but also environment. And if you don't care about the environment, which I'm sure you do, I'm sure that you care about your own health, that you care about the food that you eat. And there was a survey conducted in the UK, and UK is one of the countries with the highest food safety standards, and they revealed that almost 1/3 of executives cannot vouch for the integrity or the provenance of food ingredients that they put into production, which is a staggering statistic. Now, what's the reason behind this? Why can't we just understand and know where the food is coming from, where products are coming from, what are the roots of supply chains? And supply chains, by the way, generate 2/3 of world's GDP. So you have massive ramifications if something goes wrong. Now, the main challenge in supply chains is to connect so-called data silos. Each company basically harbors a lot of data that can give you a lot of context about what has transpired in supply chains. Yet, companies are only forced to share data one step back, one step forth. So, sharing data with their buyer or with their supplier. And this is basically impeding whole supply chain visibility. Now, when you think of supply chains are not chains. It's not linear. It gets even worse. It's a network. And if you want to establish data exchanges amongst companies, that are not vertically connected, you can understand how challenging that is. Now, the question here is blockchain silver bullet for all the problems in supply chains? I would say that blockchain is a very useful piece of technology, a fundamental piece of technology that can be a driver of trust between companies, exchanging data between companies and consumers, yet it is not the only precondition for better supply chain visibility. Now, this is an example of our client from Australia. You can imagine all those farms, really vast farms. Each farmer owns approximately 30,000 animals. And this is how they muster animals. They go there with helicopters, with dirt bikes, with SUVs, and they basically spend the entire day chasing animals. Now, what you can also see that they're technologically very equipped. I would even say that they have a lot of redundant technology pieces. And when we went back home to visit the ranches, we noticed that farmers are not not that they're not willing, but they lack time to exchange data even with their partners in the supply chain, let alone use fancy blockchain technology that would improve transparency. So what we figured out that if you want to improve transparency, if you want to improve data exchanges, you must not touch the existing processes. You need to catalyze the existing processes. You need to make them easier. And this is one of the main preconditions. Otherwise, you might stumble upon upstream partner enablement problem, as we call them. Now, vendor lock-in is a huge problem, and I'm not sure if you've heard about the scandal that was caused within the Lidl retail chain, which basically destroyed a huge investment chunk on the part of Lidl. The SAP integration failed, mostly because it was very difficult to reach backward compatibility with other legacy IT systems. And if you're building your blockchain solution for supply chains and your solution is not compatible with legacy systems, that's a huge problem. You will increase capital expenditures on the part of your customer, and you will most likely not achieve operating gains for a customer to actually see the value that they get out of blockchain technology. Now, cost and scalability of issue of mainnet. We could spend the entire day here looking at examples how mainnets might not be on a standalone basis applicable to supply chains. And we ran a few experiments back in 2015-16 when we started using Ethereum blockchain for supply chains, and we saw that if you want to exchange data, if you want to record data on Ethereum mainnet, why would you do that? Of course, someone might ask, but if you do that, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So just a brief history of what we have done as a company. As college dropouts, basically, we started developing very rudimentary solutions back in 2010 already. And then 2013, we went into supply chains. We then expanded to Chinese market partially. We also gotten into Walmart Food Safety Collaboration Center Innovation Pipeline. We saw how things look like in Asia. We then expanded into several other sectors. We partnered with Oracle, because Oracle is also offering several, we call them IT legacy systems that still function with our clients. And then later on, we partnered with other bigger companies, market leaders that are either improving supply chain visibility or making it possible for companies to verify whether or not some company or an individual indeed has a certificate needed to perform certain processes. OriginTrail ecosystem, as we designed it in order to kind of encompass and encapsulate all the solutions based on the problems that I described earlier, is now basically running on 3 core pillars. First one being neutrality. Neutrality meaning that we're building open source layer 2 scalability protocol for mainnets to be useful in supply chain settings. And OriginTrail protocol, the first version of it was launched last year. This year, with a few improvements, we're going to be launching another version by the end of this year. So having this protocol neutral allows us to be present not only within our client talks, but actually we see other companies using it for their supply chain purposes. Usability is a very important pillar in our organization, because we oftentimes notice, we even catch ourselves talking about very abstract things. And when you talk to companies' executives, you need to be offering them something useful. So usability is a very important value to have in your organization, especially in blockchain sector. Then comes inclusiveness. Inclusiveness, you need to be working with your competitors even. If you want to increase supply chain visibility, there are several service providers working with their clients, and those clients need to be exchanging data. So what you need to be working on in supply chains is to catalyze co-opetition and not competition, and that's why inclusiveness. Now, just a quick run through into the OriginTrail protocol. It sits on top of blockchain. It functions as a middleware with graph database being replicated amongst a limited number of nodes, not to incur higher costs. And graph database is being used for the reason of being able to support more interconnected cases of data exchanges in supply chains. On top of it, of course, you can add any application, and I'm going to go through a few examples that I believe are mostly important to give you an idea as to what is the extent, what is the scope of what you can do in supply chains, different sectors using blockchain solutions. Now going into usability pillar. Now this is the recent product that we are launching along with the British Standard Institution, and British Standard Institution is one of the biggest provider of different kind of standards. They go into several different verticals, and with them our initial aim is to improve veracity and integrity of certificates that they award to companies and individuals. And them as a company, they have 5,000 employees stretched across 90 countries, and they perform over 280,000 audits per year. And imagine, just having all those audited reports recorded in blockchains, it's, not very much feasible. So going back into making it more scalable is highly, highly important. As said, BSI, what is also a good example is a recent case study with a company from London, and they work with a couple of S&P 500 companies like Avery Dennison, and in their case, the objective was to increase transparency in the apparel industry. You can check that example on a website. You can go to the OriginTrail Medium blog post, and you can read more about it. Amongst other technologies used here, it was not only protocol, OriginTrail protocol, but the company, everything out of London, also partner up with IOTA. So you can get a feeling of how important it is to kind of combine certain technologies should the situation require that. Then free-range poultry. Now this is a rather small example, although the poultry is one of the biggest in Southeastern Europe. In their case, it was important to let consumers know what is the provenance of a chicken, basically, for each batch of product that was sent into stores. And this simple interface is allowing customers to verify certificates and to see what is the provenance of every product that they buy in stores. Financial flows. We figured out actually that you can use the same technology that's being used to track chicken drums to track stolen, hacked bitcoins from the Binance exchange. Graph database that we use in the protocol is specifically useful for that because using same logic that we use for tracking events in the supply chain, you can basically apply same rules and start tracking the financial assets that went into several wallets, and in that way you can actually see what is the parallel between basically DeFi and perhaps supply chains of food, which is a pretty cool thing. Now in Switzerland, we have partnered with Swiss Federal Railways. In their case, so going from food, chicken, apparel, and then to railway materials, it was important to connect and establish the connection between the railway parts that were put into a certain section of the country and the provenance of steel. Should something go wrong, so they can more quickly correlate where the steel is coming from, and they can anticipate better where the steel will deteriorate in their existing railway network. So again, very important mission. It's not only about the efficiency gains. After all, it's also about the safety of the passengers. Now, the third principle that we hold very dear is inclusiveness. And in order to improve the capability of our technologies and to be able to equip other partners to have all the knowledge and to have all the technologies that are nowadays available, we launched an organization called Trace Alliance. Now, Trace Alliance to this date is a very loose form of an organization, but what we have achieved so far is that we have onboarded over 100 companies, Deloitte being one of them, GS1, which is a global organization for standardization in supply chains, and having those companies on board, it makes it easier for us to achieve certain things we would otherwise be very much unable to achieve by ourselves. And that leads me to the final part of my presentation. I still have 5 minutes, I see, and if you have any questions, you can interrupt at the beginning of at the end of the presentation. We have launched a new website. You can go to www.origintrail.io and see what use cases, what case studies are possible using blockchain. Now, this is an advent of using this technology for supply chain purposes. But what we have achieved so far is given us a very, very solid ground to increase adoption of blockchain technology for supply chains. Our slogan here being making supply chains work together, because we think that this is the most feasible way to actually improve things, and not only improve things in the technological sector, but going back to the Amazon case, improve things for environment, for yourselves, for people in general. Thank you. Yeah.
And are they all, so are those partners or are they customers or both?
Some of them are customers, others are partners, which in some cases are using the open source technology, and we help them apply the OriginTrail technology for the use cases that they develop together with their clients. So one of that cases might be everything company out of London, and they work with Avery Dennison. So Avery Dennison is not our client. We simply provide open source technology, and we educate everything which is part of Trace Alliance on how to apply open source into supply chains.
And when you're working with these multiple partners, is there a lot of, I imagine there's a lot of politics involved, so do you basically have to run point and get everybody to agree to participate? Is that how it works?
Yeah, we try to avoid shotgun marriages. We see that bigger companies, I'm not going to mention them, but they're all very high on the blue chip list. They mandate usage of their own technology to upstream supply chain partners like farmers, brand owners. And we believe that that's not good. You should give companies a choice to freely select technology that is, to the best extent, adaptable to their existing legacy systems. So we try to avoid that. Actually, I do not recall any instance where we had to force anyone to join Trace Alliance or use the technology for that matter. So we have three ways of enabling the adoption. First one being that we work with clients by ourselves. So we really like to work on very hands-on cases. We fly to Australia. We ride dirt bikes with farmers, basically, and we try to learn how to best adapt technology for their needs. That's very cumbersome work, but at the same time, we learn a lot whilst doing so. Second way of increasing adoption of the protocol is to work through Trace Alliance and to equip partners with knowledge, with all the resources to be adapting their technologies and offer the augmented product suite to their existing customers. And third way being partnering with bigger companies like Oracle and the British Standard Institution, and then slowly, but very surely building something that can be deployed en masse. How do we monetize that? Yeah, we have several ways of monetizing that. When we work in direct arrangements with our clients, we are using credit system, very similar to what you can see with Oracle, Amazon, and other companies. The main difference here being that companies can also basically sell those credits for crypto, because they are still using mainnets in some examples. So our native token is called Trace, and we also use a small portion of Ethereum gas when we are using mainnets for certain clients. And what credit system allows us is to basically sell our services without having clients in a difficult situation of having to put cryptos on their books, which is a huge problem. So credit system is a very important part of our business model, and credits can be basically spent on consulting. They can be spent on running your application on top of the certain mainnet, Ethereum, OriginTrail, decentralized network, and we see that being a very successful model so far.
So you example the railroad supplies. What strategies do you guys use when you're trying to make sure that the items that are being tracked, that it actually is the same item all the way through the chain, that it isn't substituted or anything like that?
Yeah. So what we one of the important features of OriginTrail protocol is also a so-called consensus check. What consensus check basically allows customers is to generate automated consensus while receiving data from different parts of supply chains. So both parties, if you look at the XML that is being sent into the network, are structured according to GS1 standards, which will tell you what product, when, who, for what purpose is at a certain place in time. And at the same time, at least two companies would do that. And when you have that type of a situation, you can quickly cross-reference and see if there is a consensus established between two parties. And I mean, ideally, you would have a very low probability of collusion. But you know, in the world of supply chains, you would always have buyers and sellers, basically, and they are not colluding amongst themselves, because it is at least in buyers' interest to buy something that is, you know, of a stated origin or of a stated quality.
I guess this may be out of scope for what you guys are doing, but I guess I was also curious about, like, if you're doing the consensus check, how are you determining, like, how would they be maybe agreeing on, okay, yes, this is the same item?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it varies a lot depending on, you know, what the materials are, what the industry is.
Yeah. Yeah. So going into food supply chains a bit, you cannot prove provenance, you cannot prove origins merely by adopting blockchain technology or any digital product. What is needed there is forensics. And for that purpose, we also partner with different laboratories. We're also conducting experiments within European consortia being funded by European Commission. And the technology that we use there is DNA testing and mass spectrometry. So you would basically determine what is the provenance based on the isotope levels in food supply chains. So, you know, provenance cannot be established having this product only. So there needs to be a wider collaboration across sectors. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. With regards
Do you mind if we
the
take it
the
off
trade
the
flow,
stage?
is it possible to integrate with exchanges? Because I think that would be really important to integrate with exchanges, because I can't see customers going to exchanges to buy the trace token. So is that possible?
Yeah, it is, and we're actually going into that direction already. As I mentioned, credit systems allow companies to be using mainnets without having to deal with crypto. And in the back end of it, in order to improve efficiencies for us and other service providers that are going to be adopting the protocol, we're also enabling and building direct integrations with exchanges. So far, it's very hard to say which exchange is the most stable one, because you have regulations going in different directions. But we are ready to deploy that very soon.
Right, okay. And do we have customers ready to use the ODN when it is ready?
Yeah. They are using it already.
They use it already?
Yeah,
Right,
from smaller ones to bigger ones, slowly opening up their pipeline of deals and businesses.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks.